The drive from Houston to the outskirts of Uvalde, Texas, felt endless that summer. My dad's old Jeep rattled over every pothole, the sun beating down through the cracked window seals. I was 13, legs sticking to the seat, trying to distract myself with a battered Game Boy I never seemed to win at. It was a 7-hour haul, and the only things to look at were the faded fields and the occasional buzzard circling overhead. My dad didn't say much. He was focused on the road, probably thinking about work, or maybe just enjoying the quiet. We rolled up to the gate just as the sky started to bruise purple. The lease was nearly 1,000 acres of scrub and mesquite, all of it wrapped in barbed wire. Dad unlocked the gate, and we creaked down a dirt track to a cabin that looked like it hadn't seen company in years. Inside, it smelled like dust and old plywood. The floor was scattered with raccoon droppings, and a couple of flies buzzed around a broken window. We spent the first half hour sweeping out dirt and unrolling our sleeping bags on rusty cots. That night, I couldn't settle in. The air felt thick, like the cabin was holding its breath. I kept my eyes on the ceiling, listening for anything moving outside, but all I heard was the hum of insects and the occasional scurry in the walls. I must have drifted off eventually, but it was the kind of sleep where you wake up more tired than before. I remember rolling over and glancing at my dad. He was awake too, just staring at the ceiling, but he didn't say anything. By 7 in the morning, we were already sweating. Dad figured we should scout for hog tracks before the heat got worse. The land was quiet, just the crunch of dry grass under our boots and the distant whine of cicadas. After about an hour, we found patches of earth torn up. Hog sign, just like Dad said we'd find. We followed the trail into a patch of trees, the shade barely making a dent in the heat. I was crouched down, looking at the ground, when Dad suddenly stuck out his arm, stopping me. He was staring ahead, eyes narrowed at something through the trees. I followed his gaze and saw something, or someone, standing about 50 yards off. Most of them was hidden behind tree trunks, but the color was impossible to miss. Bright, almost neon red. Dad called out, his voice steady but louder than usual, letting whoever it was know we were hunters, and this was private land. The figure didn't move, not even a twitch. We started moving closer, slow and cautious. Dad's hand hovered near his pistol. The red jacket stood out like a wound against the trees, but the person, if it was a person, was turned away, hands buried in their pockets. Dad told me to stay behind him and quietly unclipped his holster. My heart was thumping so hard, I thought it'd give us away. We kept closing the gap, the heat pressing in from all sides. Dad circled to the right, talking to the figure, asking if they were okay. When he got in front, he just stopped. I called out, voice shaking, and he told me it was a mannequin. I walked over, legs stiff, and stared at it. The clothes were spotless. No dust, no stains, not even a bird dropping. It looked like someone had just dressed it and left it there, in the middle of nowhere, in 98-degree heat. That's when it hit me, like a cold hand on the back of my neck. I felt exposed, like someone was watching us from deeper in the trees. Dad's face was drawn tight. He whispered that we were leaving. Now. We turned back, moving faster than before. Dad kept his pistol out, scanning the brush. I tried not to look over my shoulder, but every step felt like something was closing in behind us. Back at the cabin, we packed in silence. I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see that red jacket in the trees. Dad made a call to his friend who owned the lease, voice low and tense. We didn't even eat lunch, just threw everything in the Jeep and drove out, dust swirling behind us. The whole way back, neither of us said much. Dad's knuckles stayed white on the wheel. After we hit the highway, Dad called his friend again. The owner sounded confused. He swore nobody else had the key, and the property was high-fenced all the way around. The rest of the drive was just white noise, tire hum, the occasional truck passing, my Game Boy's low battery light blinking. I didn't ask Dad what he thought. I didn't want to know. Later that night, after we got home, Dad told me he hadn't slept either. He said he'd felt like something was outside the cabin, watching. He just didn't want to scare me. A week later, Dad's friend checked the property. He called back, saying he'd searched every inch. There was nothing. No mannequin, no fresh tracks, not even a scrap of red fabric. I still think about that mannequin, standing out there in the heat, waiting for someone. Or maybe it wasn't waiting at all. Maybe it was just a warning, meant for whoever wandered too far from the road. Whatever it was, I'm glad we never met the person who put it there. Some things in the woods are better left alone.
We left Paris at sunrise, the four of us packed tight in my parents' old motorhome, windows rolled down for the summer heat. My little brother was already asleep with his head against my shoulder, and my mother kept pointing out fields of sunflowers as we drove south. I was 10 that summer, old enough to notice the way my father's hands tightened on the wheel whenever we passed a town that looked too crowded. We reached the border late, tired and sticky from the drive. My father pulled out the map, tracing a finger over the lines. Near the Spanish frontier, every campsite he called was already full. My mother tried to sound cheerful, but I could hear the edge in her voice when she suggested we try just one more. It was nearly dark when we found the parking lot. The place was half empty. A few other motorhomes scattered between silent trucks. The air was heavy with the smell of diesel and old grass. My father parked under a flickering street lamp, muttering that it would have to do for the night. We ate dinner with the curtains drawn, plastic plates balanced on our knees. My brother wanted to play outside, but my mother shook her head, telling him it was too late, too dark. I pressed my face to the window, watching headlights drift by, wondering who else might be sleeping in their vehicles tonight. Our little RV had 2 beds, one in the back for my parents, and a narrow overcab bed above the driver's seat for me and my brother. We climbed up with our pajamas and whispered about the next day, the promise of Spanish beaches. My father checked the locks, then said goodnight, his voice muffled by the thin door. My father had a habit. He never used the tiny bathroom at night. Instead, he'd slip outside to pee in the grass or behind a tree, even if it was cold. I'd gotten used to the sound of the door clicking open, then closing again, footsteps fading into the dark. It always made me feel a little safer, like he was keeping watch. After a while, my brother's breathing slowed beside me. The RV was quiet, except for the hum of trucks outside and the distant echo of someone's radio. I tried to count the seconds between the street lamp's flickers, pulling the blanket up to my chin. Eventually, I drifted off. Somewhere deep in the night, I woke up. There was a sound, A soft, irregular rustling, like someone searching through a bag or moving things around. At first, I thought it was my mother, maybe looking for something in the dark. I stayed still, listening, heart pounding in my ears. The darkness inside the RV felt thick, pressed in around me. I could just make out a shape, a silhouette, tall and still, standing near the little table in the living area. It didn't move for a moment. Then, slowly, it reached for the door and eased it open. I thought, just for a second, that it was my father, sneaking out for his usual midnight walk. The silhouette slipped through the door without a sound. The latch clicked softly behind it. I waited, expecting to hear footsteps on the gravel, but there was only silence. I pulled the blanket tighter and turned toward my brother, who was still breathing slow and deep. Maybe I was dreaming, I thought. Maybe it was nothing. I let my eyes close, telling myself I'd ask my father about it in the morning. The first light crept through the curtains, painting the RV in pale blue. My mother was already up, boiling water for coffee. My father stretched, yawning, and my brother tumbled down from the bed, asking if we could finally go swimming. For a moment, everything felt normal. My mother started looking for her handbag, digging through the cushions, then the cupboards. She asked if anyone had seen the camera bag, the one with all our photos from the trip. My father shook his head, confused. I watched her face change. Confusion, then panic, then something colder. That's when it hit me. The shadow I'd seen wasn't my father. He was still in bed, and my mother hadn't left the back room. Someone else had been inside with us, moving through our things while we slept. My stomach twisted. I told my parents what I'd seen, voice barely above a whisper. My father's face went pale. He checked the door, then the locks, running his hands over the empty seats where the bags should have been. My mother just sat down, staring at nothing, her coffee untouched. Outside, the parking lot was already emptying, trucks rumbling away one by one. We packed up in silence and drove to the nearest police station. The officer behind the desk barely looked up when my father explained what happened. He just nodded, said it was common around here, that thieves watched for travelers who looked tired, desperate, or distracted.
It happens all the time. You're lucky it was just bags. Sometimes they take more.
We left with a police report and nothing else. My mother stared out the window, silent. My brother played with a plastic dinosaur, too young to understand. My father just drove, eyes fixed on the road, jaw clenched tight. All day, I kept replaying the night in my head. What if I'd called out? What if I'd asked, "Dad, is that you?" Would the shadow have run or turned around? Would I have woken everyone or made things worse? Even now, years later, I can still see that shape. Silent, careful, moving through the dark while we slept. The memory sits heavy in my chest, a reminder that sometimes the worst things can happen quietly, right under your nose. We were lucky, I guess, but I don't think I'll ever sleep as deeply as I did before that night.
Cradle Mountain National Park is the kind of place that looks untouched, like it's been holding its breath for centuries. My family lived just a short drive from Lake St. Clair, right on the edge of all that wild, and if you'd asked me then, I'd have said I loved it more than anything. My dad was a biologist, my mom a botanist. They'd drag us out for field studies, but to me and my little brother, it was just camping with a side of plant trivia. I never minded. Back then, the wild felt like home. When I was 12, my parents finally let me camp alone at the lake, so long as I brought our old German Shepherd, Max. He'd been a police dog before he was ours, never barked unless he meant it. That was their way of saying they trusted me, but only just. But by the time I hit 15, the lake felt too safe. I wanted more distance, more challenge. I started pestering my parents to let me take the quad bike deeper into the park, just me and the trees. Every time they said no. After what felt like the 100th time, I stopped asking. I told them I was camping at the lake with friends, packed my tent and some food, and waited for sunrise. As soon as the sky started to lighten, I took the quad and headed into the reserve, lying to everyone but myself. By late morning, I'd found a spot that felt hidden enough. I set up camp, made a sandwich, and let myself believe I was the only person for miles. The forest was thick, tangled with moss and ferns, the kind of place where everything feels older than you are. After lunch, I headed out on foot, hoping to find an old rock face where Dad once found fossils. The forest floor felt soft under my boots, and the air was thick with the smell of earth and eucalyptus. I thought I knew the way. But after a while, the path twisted in ways I didn't recognize. I stopped, checked my compass, and realized I'd gotten myself turned around. It didn't feel urgent yet. I figured if I kept heading south, I'd hit the lake eventually. By the time I noticed the sun dipping behind the trees, it was already late afternoon. Shadows stretched across the ground, swallowing the light. I started to hurry, trying to retrace my steps. Then, all at once, the forest just stopped. No birds, no wind, nothing but my own breathing. It was like the air itself was waiting for something. My pulse started to hammer in my ears. Somewhere above me, a twig cracked, then another, off to my right. I told myself it was just possums or birds, but the silence felt too heavy, too deliberate. Then, clear as day, I heard it. My own voice echoing through the trees. It called out, casual, almost bored. "Hey, come here." I spun around, searching for someone, anyone. I thought maybe I'd wandered close to a trail, maybe someone had seen me and wanted to help. But there was no one, just the trees crowding in that weird, echoing quiet. Then it came again, but from behind me now, up in the branches. "Hey, come here." It was my voice, but stretched, like a recording played back wrong. I called out, asking where they were, trying to sound braver than I felt, but the only answer was the wind picking up and the leaves trembling high above me. A third time, now to my left. "Hey, come here." That was when I ran. I crashed through the undergrowth, branches clawing at my arms, not caring which direction I was going anymore. I didn't stop until my lungs burned. I fumbled for my compass, hands shaking, and tried to point myself south again. The forest felt closer, like the trees were listening. Just as I started to move, I heard it again, right behind me. "Hey, come here." The words were almost in my ear, and I spun around, heart pounding, but there was nothing, just the empty, silent woods. I bolted. I ran so hard I nearly tripped over my own feet, barely registering the branches whipping at my face. All I wanted was out of the trees, out of the dark, out of that silence. And just before I broke through the trees onto the lake shore, I heard it. A laugh, twisted and wrong, like 3 people laughing at once. It rattled through the branches and settled in my bones. I stumbled out onto the rocky shore, gulping in the open air. The silence behind me felt like a wall. I fished out my phone, hands still shaking, and called my parents, voice cracking as I told them everything, where I'd really gone, what I'd heard. My parents showed up in less than an hour. They were angry, mostly about the lying, but when I tried to explain what happened, They just looked at me like I was making excuses. I didn't argue, I just wanted to go home. I cried the whole drive back. I didn't sleep for days after. My dad went out the next morning to collect my gear. He never said a word about what he saw, or didn't see, at my camp. Since then, I haven't set foot past the lake. I tell people it's because I outgrew it, but the truth is, I'm still afraid of what waits in that silence. I miss the wild, but I can't go back. Not after what called out to me, using my own voice.